The story that we're about to get into today is one of the most gruesome, and actually is probably the most gruesome true crime story I have covered to date. It is something that I cannot wrap my head around, and it is a very recent case. It is also a story of a mother who discovered her son in one of the most gruesome ways, and so I want to try to cover this as sympathetically as I can, but also provide you with all the details that I can. So if you have a weak stomach and this is not your type of thing, I suggest you skip this video. And to the family of Shad, especially his mother, my deepest sympathies go out to you. And I cannot imagine what you are going through right now and the strength that it took you in the moments at the beginning of this to make the 911 call. I commend you, and my prayers go out to your entire family. On February 23rd, officers were dispatched out to a home in the 800 block of Stony Brook Lane in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Tara Pakanich had called 911 as she had discovered the severed head of her son, Shad Thyrion, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in a bucket in her basement. I think it's important at this point to talk about Shad and how his friends and his family described him. Shad has been described as compassionate and kind, the type of person that would do for everyone else before doing for himself. He loved camping, playing games, and he loved spending time with his family. He also was an artist who specialized in wood carving, and he was 25 years old. He did struggle with some addiction issues, and we're going to kind of get into that as we go on with this story. Shad was dating a young woman named Taylor Schabusiness, who was 24 years old. We're going to have to talk about Taylor in order to kind of understand her backstory a little bit as well. Taylor Schabusiness was 24, as I said, and married to a man named Warren Schabusiness. You heard me correctly. Taylor Schabusiness was married to Warren, but she had been dating Shad Thyrion off and on since high school, and at the time of the crime was currently dating Shad. We're unsure of the nature of the relationship between Warren and Taylor. It could be that they had an open relationship and that Taylor was allowed to date outside the marriage, or Warren was known to be in prison and jail quite often, so it could be something of if he was in jail, she was allowed to date outside the marriage. If he was home, she wasn't. We're not quite sure. What we do know is that Taylor and Shad had had an on and off again relationship since high school, and they had known each other since high school. Next, we need to talk about the fact that Taylor was a young mother. She had had a son, and he was taken away from her pretty much right away and placed in the custody of his grandparents, and he still today remains in the custody of his grandparents. Taylor had a pretty rough childhood. Her mother passed away when she was very, very young, and then she was placed in the custody of her father. Her father was not a good man, and he violently and extremely SA'd her from the time that she was young until she was able to escape. This type of trauma can often lead to addiction issues, a lot of drug addiction and alcoholism and things like that to make you kind of forget the trauma that you have faced growing up. But it can also lead to another type of addiction, which is sex addiction, and Taylor was very open with the fact that she suffered with sex addiction. Here's a post she posted on her Facebook showing that she suffered with this. And as we move forward through the story, we also find out that she also suffered with drug addiction. Let's jump back into when the police arrived at Tara's house. When they arrived at Tara's house, they did immediately see the bucket that was covered with a beach towel, and they found Shad's head. There was also a male organ in there and 2 knives. Then they found blood on the mattress, blood kind of splashed throughout the shower, and pretty much blood everywhere. They said that the crime scene did not look very organized, like anyone had really tried to clean up that well. And so then the police began to ask Tara what had gone on that led up to the 911 call. Tara then told them that her son, Shad, and his girlfriend, Taylor, had gone out on February 21st. Taylor had picked up Shad at about 9 p.m. on February 21st, and they had left the house. And then on February 22nd, at some point, they had come back to the house. Tara had not physically seen her son since that they left at the 9 p.m. time, but on February 22nd, at some point, Tara's boyfriend had seen them, and Tara and her boyfriend had kind of been in and out of the house all day, but they did hear Tara and Shad moving around throughout the house on February 22nd. So about 2:33 a.m., Tara reported hearing a door slam and a car drive off. And that was the point where she got up and thought, oh, Taylor left, and I'll go say hi to Shad and, turn off the basement light, because she had noticed the basement light was on. So she went to go turn off the basement light and say hi to Shad. And when she went down the stairs, she noticed the bucket, which was out of place, and she removed the beach towel, and that is when she found her son's head. I cannot imagine that moment. As a mother, to find your son deceased in any way, shape, or form would be difficult, but to find his head the way that she did and to still be able to function and step into calling 911 as quickly as she did, hats off to her. And again, my sympathy and my prayers go out to her as she moves forward, because I can't imagine dealing with this is going to be easy for her. So she then called 911 and the officers came over, and that's kind of where we are with this now. So officers then decide that they're going to dispatch 2 officers over to Taylor's apartment to talk with her, and then the rest of the officers are going to stay there and kind of go through the basement and the house and see what they can find. The medical examiner at this point has discovered that the head and the neck have marks that are consistent with strangulation. So the police then go over to Taylor's apartment, the 2 police officers, and they see immediately when they pull up, they see the van that Taylor drives. And they are looking in the van windows just to kind of see what they can see. And they glance over, and Taylor has come walking out of her apartment. She was not expecting to see police officers, and I don't think police officers were expecting to see Taylor, if I'm being honest. So imagine face to face, they see each other, they both kind of pause, and they're looking at each other, and the police ask her, "Do you know why we're here?" To which she says, "For the warrant for my arrest." The police officers are a little bit shocked, because I don't think they realized she had a warrant for her arrest. But as they're looking at her and she's saying this, they realize that her black jumpsuit has blood on it, her hands have blood on it, she's covered in blood. So they go ahead and they arrest her and take her in for questioning. When they get her there for questioning and they notice the dried blood, they're kind of looking over the dried blood on her. They also notice that she has cuts on her hands and her thumb, and they ask her about this, and she proceeds to tell them that they are self-inflicted, which I don't think the police believed at that point. I wouldn't believe it. She's got blood all over her, and she just left. Anyway, that's what she said. They were self-inflicted. So then the police proceed to tell her what happened with Shad. And she says, quote, "That's pretty fucked up." That was her response to hearing what had happened to him. This is the person she was in a relationship with since high school, off and on. That's a strange response. I think that's a strange response. She then goes on to confirm that she is the person who dropped the gun back from Shad's house. That when Shad's mother had heard the door close and the van drive off, she is the person who drove the van back from Shad's mother's house. Now keep in mind that while this interview with her is going on, the police are still back at the basement, going through the basement and everything. And so the police proceed to ask her where the rest of Shad's body is. Taylor responds, "It's in the basement." The detective then asks her what happened, and Taylor responds, "That's a very good question." Next, she tries to claim that she was blacked out. She tries to claim that she was blacked out and came back to while she was strangling him. We're going to get to that. So she claims that she was blacked out while she was strangling him and came to before he was dead and before dismembering him. And then she proceeds to kind of spill the beans on everything. So the whole blacked out thing doesn't really add up. The following account that we're about to hear is what Taylor told police. So this is from her. This is what she said happened. Taylor said that she picked Shad up with another friend of theirs around 9 p.m. on February 21st, and that they went to a person's house and purchased drugs. They then went back to Taylor's house and they did smoke the wacky tobacco, and all of them, all three of them. And then Taylor and Shad smoked the methamphetamine. Then Taylor said that she injected herself and Shad with trazodone. Now, trazodone is a very strong sleeping medication, antidepressant, and anxiety medication. Methamphetamine is a medication that kind of makes you go up, and the trazodone would make you come down. So I'm not quite sure. I don't use these kind of medications or drugs, so I'm not sure why the combination, but that is what Taylor said they did. She said it. Then at some point they went back to Shad's mom's house, and they went down to the basement. She said about 5 minutes after, so at this point it's just her and Shad when they go back to Shad's mom's house. And when they get down to the basement, she said about 5 minutes after they got into the basement, Shad handed her a chain, and he had one on himself. These chains were kind of like dog choker type chains, and that they had played with strangulation type of sex acts in the past. And that is what Shad wanted to do at this point. So Shad then went over to the bed and laid face down on the bed, and Taylor went over and, in her words, just went crazy on him. She said she choked him until he was spitting up blood and turning purple, and she just continued. Now I want you to think about the fact, and we've talked about this in other cases, that to strangle someone until they are actually dead, it takes 4 to 6 minutes. We're going to go ahead and put a timer right here on the screen. But 4 to 6 minutes she did this. And in her words, she went crazy. After telling Green Bay police officer David Graff that she went crazy to do this, and while doing this, she then proceeded to say, "Yeah, I liked it." David Graff says that he believes the "yeah, I liked it" was in reference to the strangulation, the act of the strangulation. Taylor goes on to tell police that she first played with the victim's body for 2 to 3 hours. I have to be kind of gentle with how I say this, but this playing with the victim's body for the 2 to 3 hours is what led to her sexual assault charges. So you can imagine what she did with the body for the 2 to 3 hours. She then goes to the kitchen and gathers knives, and she proceeds to tell the police officers that she preferred the bread knife, as the large serrated blade worked best. She also tells the police that she had planned on taking all the body parts with her, but that she got lazy. Body parts were placed in plastic shopping bags, a cardboard box. The torso was found in a plastic storage container. And then, as we discussed, the plastic bucket. Body parts were found in the basement and in the van. In the van, they found a crock pot box, and in the crock pot box, they found parts of the legs. Taylor is even reportedly told the police to have fun finding all of the organs. She's also quoted as saying, "I can't believe I left the head behind, though." And then she asked the police officers if they had ever loved something or someone so much that they killed it. So currently she is sitting with a $2 million bail through Brown County. And the reason that it is $2 million at this point, a good portion of the reason is that she is a flight risk, and that is because she apparently was on some kind of work release program at the time of the crime, and she was supposed to have a monitoring device on. So I don't know if she was supposed to be in jail and then only out when she was working, or if she was allowed out but had to have like a monitoring device on. Either way, she didn't have the monitoring device on and she wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing, obviously, and she committed this crime while that all was a thing. So she's currently sitting with a $2 million bond. Something I think is kind of important to mention, just because I don't really believe in coincidences. So a lot of Taylor's friends have come forward and said that Taylor had a Jeffrey Dahmer obsession. And for anyone that doesn't know the Jeffrey Dahmer story, I'm surprised if you don't, but let's talk about that for a minute. Jeffrey Dahmer was from Wisconsin as well, and he killed 17 men. And most of those 17 men that he killed them by strangulation and dismemberment. Did she plan this ahead of time, or did she do this and then think, oh, I'm gonna do, I don't know. But I don't believe in coincidence at all. And I think that's too much of a coincidence if she had that kind of obsession and then did something along that similar line. So I thought that that was worth mentioning. Another thing I think is worth mentioning, because like I said, I don't believe in coincidence, is that Taylor Schabusiness' nickname or other name on Facebook is T Killa, T-K-I-L-L-A. Here's a post showing that right here. And I just find that extremely terrifying considering what she ended up doing. So here are the things we don't know, and we're hoping to find out moving forward, because like I said, this is a very new case. This happened on February 23rd, so we're not even a month out yet. But we don't know how long Shad was actually dead prior to his mother discovering his severed head. We don't know how long. We do know what Taylor has said, but we don't know how long he was actually deceased. As I previously mentioned, the other thing we don't know is why Schabusiness was free to begin with when this crime was committed. We know that she was involved in this work release program. We know that she was supposed to be being monitored. We don't know the full details there yet. We hopefully will find that out. But if everything was in place the way it was supposed to be, would she have been able to commit this crime? That is a question that I would like to find answers to. Another thing we don't know is what was Taylor's motive in this crime? Like, was it drug fueled? Was all the drugs she mixed together, did it cause her to just kind of lose it and do this? Was it premeditated? Did Shad see her do something to somebody else, and did that cause her to end his life? There are rumors out there saying that that could possibly be true. I'm not jumping on the rumor train. I'm just throwing that out there. Some people believe that Shad might have seen something and that she needed to end his life in order to not have him tell. But I think if that was the case, maybe she would have done it in a much more discreet way. So I'm not 100% that I believe that. But we don't know her motive. We're not 100% sure on her motive, and that would be interesting to know moving forward. And the last thing that comes into question here is whether Taylor's story is 100% true. Because like I said, these details that we have so far about how this all went down is the account from Taylor. And as I said, Taylor claims to have blacked out, but then also was able to recount all of this. Now, we do know that detectives have said that her account of the situation lines up with the evidence that they've collected at the scene. So it seems that her story is correct. But as I said, this just happened on February 23rd. So, it's going to take a little bit for everything to kind of come together and us to be 100% sure. With all that being said, that kind of wraps this up. I would love to hear in the comment section what you think of this. As I said at the very beginning of this, I think this is the craziest, the most brutal, the most devastating for a family that I have ever heard in a true crime case. This, I believe, in doing my research, I can't tell you how many tears I shed as a mom of a young man. I shed so many tears going through and doing this story because I can't imagine how Tara felt going through this and is feeling right now. It's scary to me to think that this was someone that was welcomed into their home. It was someone that Shad had known since high school. It was a friend. They had known Taylor for a long time. And they welcomed her and allowed her into their home for years. You know what I mean? And so to me, that's extremely scary. I think about how many kids I've welcomed into my home. My kids' friends have always been welcomed into my home. And though I don't think any of my kids' friends would do that, I highly doubt that Tara thought her son's friends would be capable of doing what was done. And that's what makes this so terrifying. So I would love to hear what you all have to say in the comment section. And again, to Tara and to Shad's family, my heart and my prayers go out to all of you. To everyone else, wishing you much kindness and much love. Bye for now.